We're in New York City with Senator Kiko Pangilinan, the surprise winner in our elections.
Thank you, Maria, for coming over and seeking us out. Excited to have this discussion. It's the first for me.
Oh, fantastic.
Pretty much. Well, there were a few back home, but that was like a week ago. But yeah, a sit down like this is the first for me. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, you did significantly better than anyone had expected. What did you expect? Were you surprised?
In a way, yes. The polls placed me at number 17 in the first week of May.
Right.
So 5 days before Election Day, I was polled at number 17. So when that poll came out, I said, maybe, at least number 12, maybe. But 5 days later, on Election Day, you know, I said 17. I said, maybe 13. If I'm going to lose, let's not lose so bad. I said 17 is, you know, a rejection, and that would not sit well with all those who went out of the way to support us, and of course the liberal, democratic, progressive forces. And so, it came as a surprise. I would have been happy with 10, 11, but we ended up number 5, and BAM ended up number 2. So yes, it was a pleasant surprise and a welcome one after so many years of so many elections wherein we had suffered setback after setback. So this is a welcome, exciting development, and
during the times when it didn't look like you were going to make it, you know, you didn't have that much money, you didn't have,
yes.
You know, what kept you going?
You know, the 2022 campaign, for me, and when I ran for vice president with
Yes.
Lenny, that the outpouring of support was unprecedented. I've never seen that in all my years as an active political participant since my college days. So at the back of my mind, I said that couldn't just be a fluke. In fact, Sharon and I, at one point, we were discussing, and she said, "Where are they? Where were the hundreds of thousands and even the millions who came out?
Yeah.
Where are they now?" I said, "Good question," because we were polling 17.
Yeah.
16. But at the back of my mind, I said, and that's probably why, that is one of the reasons why I ran in the first place. I said, we didn't get this far just to go this far. Or we didn't go this far just to get this far. So, yes, I was polling poorly, but I was telling myself, people will come around if you, maybe not now, maybe in 2028, I said, but they'll come around. We just have to keep providing them leadership. And going around in the last 3 years after the 2022 elections, everywhere I went, people would say they were there, they were in these rallies. It was never so personal.
Yeah.
And that was my 5th run. So I had 4 other runs.
Yeah.
So it was never this personal nationally.
How would you describe the Filipinos today?
I would say they are capable of making informed decisions,
Yeah.
provided the information is made available. And that's a challenge.
Yeah.
Why do I say this? During the POGO hearings, the trust rating of Ressa, based on the traditional polling institutions, say the established polling institutions like Pulse Asia and SWS. She was pretty much statistically tied with Rafi Tulfo at one point.
Yeah.
Which is to say, therefore, that when people saw live streaming, saw the questions being asked, saw the position taken, they said, this is somebody we can trust, somebody that we agree with. In 2021, when I was still preparing for my Senate re-election bid, the Farmally hearings happened.
Yes.
The Farmally hearings were all of September, towards the end of August, all of September. I was polled in July, and I was ranking 12 to 15 in July, so just outside the winning circle. But after the Senate hearings on Farmally, I jumped to number 8 to 12 by October. And the only intervention, if you can call it that, was the Farmally hearings. So there I saw, when you provide the information unfiltered, our voters are capable of making informed decisions. It's the challenge precisely because of disinformation,
right,
and the short attention span. And I think digital technology has something to do with that. There's so much information, that's thrown at you daily.
Yeah.
That 1 week is a long time.
Yes.
And therefore sentiments can shift.
Yes.
Because of how easily accessible so much information is. So people will forget.
Yes.
So there. You asked me to describe the Filipino based on the science of polling. And 2, very emotional, of course.
Yes.
I think leadership is always primal, they say. It's always emotional. So whether you're Filipino or American, it's always, the markets is never rational.
Yes.
They say that, even in, economics. So it's also how you make them feel, how you are able to, connect at the level not just of the rational but also of the emotional. So they love underdogs, and in this last election, I was probably the summa cum laude of disinformation and trolling and bashing, and I think it went overboard. Particularly with the younger generation who can actually see through all the disinformation. They saw us as being, subjected to so much harassment and insults and mocking that they saw through it. And so the emotional aspect of the Filipino was, I was suddenly the underdog, being insulted, pilloried, mocked. And everybody loves the underdog, I guess, in that sense, Filipinos too. It's like, the proverbial story of Fernando Po Jr. being beaten up black and blue in the beginning until he gets he gets to come back and avenge the defeat or the beating. That's what, in a sense, happened to me. As soon as I hit number 12 in January, in the top 12 ranking, the viciousness of the attacks were every day. I remember I refused to guest in one mainstream media show, public affairs show, because when you looked at all the comments, I said, this is not, it's open season for me. It doesn't help me that I'm able to articulate my positions, but in all the social media cards that they put up, my position on the impeachment, my position on the ICC, it was all trolled. So I said, and that was every day from January up to May, no let up. But I guess people were able to see through that too.
How did that affect you personally, and then as the candidate, what things did you do differently?
Let's put it this way. I've been through that.
Yeah.
So it was like, I knew it. It didn't surprise me at all. Of course, I was discouraged in the sense that, how do we fight back?
Yeah.
But from 2016 onwards, I was, when you're president of the Liberal Party under Duterte's administration, you'll definitely be, front and center in terms of all the attacks. I remember we had this discussion.
Yes.
When President Duterte's dip in the polls, right, was double digit.
Yes.
The biggest in his 6-year term. That was 2018, September, I remember, because of rice.
Yes.
It was also the biggest attacks on the opposition, the Liberal Party, demonization online. So you could see that that's how it was then. And so when it was happening to me this time around, I guess my only concern was, were we effective enough to do a pushback? Because we did prepare for that. In fact, we put more funding in digital because it's extremely more cost effective. I think our entire digital budget was equivalent to 1 week of TV ads.
Wow. So it really is a shift already. Digital determines a lot, or?
Yes, I think so. Based on the results, yes. Based on the polling, maybe not.
Yes.
Maybe not, but again.
But the polling now has to shift.
Too, the methodology has to be revisited and overhauled, I think, because how do you explain 7 or 8 of their top 10, top 12 candidates didn't make it, right?
Senator, let me ask you. So we'll pull out of the campaign and go into what you plan to do. Now, Risa Ontiveros is no longer the sole opposition. You have Bam Aquino and yourself. How do you see moving forward?
Well, it's a delicate tightrope balancing act because we ran on the platform of addressing prices of food.
Yeah.
And I don't think we can address that effectively if we don't work with the executive department in that regard. The investigations done by Senator Risa on Pogo would not have come to fruition completely if the Malacanang was not convinced to ban it. So that's the challenge. How do we commit and how do we make our commitments and our promises to the electorate real without the cooperation necessary, the synergy necessary to make it happen? The executive department must step in to make sure that we are able to bring down rice prices and food. I've done it before, but it was really when I was in the executive department as a food security secretary. So it's going to be a cooperation necessary to move forward. So that's the challenge. We did go to town with the challenges of bringing down food prices. Precisely.
You campaigned on an issue. It worked.
Yes, because, and so did BAM.
Yes.
BAM campaigned on the issue of education and jobs.
Yeah.
Which is number one. Actually, the number one concern of the voter
has always been until Duterte, the mayor, ran, right? Then all of a sudden, drugs rose up from number 8 to number 1, all of a sudden.
Yes. And that's part of the narrative that, that was repeated over and over and over, and therefore voters bought into it. And that's a key challenge of leadership, is how do you present that narrative that voters, your constituents, stakeholders will buy into it, because ultimately you're only as effective as the number of the vast majority who support your interventions and are willing to buy into it and support it. So going back to so we ran on that platform of bringing down food prices.
Yes.
BAM ran on that platform of expanding and supporting the free tertiary level education because budgets were cut. So you need to coordinate, you need to cooperate at some level, have synergy with the executive to be able to achieve all these. So is there time to do that? The next 3 years? I think so. So that's one. The other aspect is, of course, we're moving forward to 2028, wherein we would like to provide alternatives to where we are today. So it's, when do you start thinking of 2028 and when do you start? But I think in the end, 2028 will take care of itself provided we address what we committed to address. In other words, politics, the best politics is still performance.
Let me ask you about what's coming up in July, the impeachment trial.
Well, we will see. There are a lot of legal issues, actually.
Yeah.
The fact that, it's a new Congress.
Yes.
It was filed in the previous Congress, and now does the new Congress have jurisdiction? That's a question that has to be, I think, is currently being raised before the Supreme Court. Because there is such a thing as a one-year ban.
Yes. Oh my gosh, how interesting.
That you file this complaint, and after you filed it, if it's dismissed or rendered, set aside for whatever reason, then there's a one-year ban. Mm-hmm. So they brought this to the Supreme Court, questioning jurisdiction. And so ultimately, the Supreme Court may have to rule on this. So in the meantime, of course, we are mandated under the law, under the Constitution, as an impeachment court to try it. So, assuming all legal hurdles are overcome, then we will sit in judgment, and ultimately it's the evidence. We will have to decide on the basis of the evidence and, of course, the rule of law.
How do you lead? I mean, it's hard to be in government in the age of exponential lies, right? When you look at your track record, you've always voted the values that you pushed forward. How do you lead in this time when you don't know whether you're reaching people, and the narratives, the lies, win?
Well, they didn't this time around.
Yes.
So, and why? Well, because we stuck to the truth. We ensured that we had enough stakeholders on board. We learned from previous elections that you cannot not actively be involved with social media, where the disinformation actually is most pervasive, clearly. So learning from all that, we stick to the truth, we fight, we create spaces wherein our issues can be raised. I go back to when the voters see for themselves.
Yes.
They are capable of making informed decisions.
So your faith in the Filipino is still strong.
Well, we placed number 5.
Yes. Which is why it's wonderful to speak with you now. During that time, at the time of Duterte, like media, legislators also face this. I call them the 3 C's: corrupt, coerce, co-opt.
Yes.
What made you? How did you avoid the 3 C's?
Well, I did so, and I paid dearly for it. At some point, I would say there were other senators who I've always, in the context of polling and my ranking in the Senate races, this was my worst 2025. In fact, in 2022, I was ranking number 9, number 8, before the election started. In this case, I was number 15 before the election started. Why is that? I was always in the top 4 or 5. In fact, in 2016, I even hit number 1. Mm-mm. In 2007, same, I hit number 1 at some point in the poll. In 2001, at the start of 1 year before the campaign, I was already number 10. So all that, what was the difference then and now? from 2016 onwards, I was attacked viciously by disinformation. And so all the others who were in the same rung as me continued to be in the same rung as me because they were not subjected to disinformation, massive disinformation, unlike I was. So at some point you'd say, if I just decided to play ball. In 2016, I was asked to take over the leadership of the Liberal Party when 100 congressmen left. One under the Liberal parties. Within 2 months from elections, they all shifted. And here I was, not just staying with the party, I was being asked to lead it. I could have just said, no, this is too, it's too toxic. But who else would? I was the only senator from the Liberal Party elected. I was the highest ranking in the Senate. Lenny, who was elected vice president, had asked me to stay on because by tradition, the highest ranking member of the party, elected official, becomes
right.
And she said, it was really Jesse who was a member of the party, not me.
Interesting.
So when she asked me, she needed my support. I said, okay, we'll. She was chairperson of the party, and I became party president. And all hell broke loose in terms of, the daily bashing, insults, no let up. So at one point I said, it would have been all simpler if I just, if I just went where the wind was blowing, go where the, kumbaga, nasaan yung ihip ng hangin doon. But like I said, if that happened to me, then what's this all about? Right? It's really not just about staying in power. It's about changing, making meaningful change, in our politics, in our governance. So, so I said, no, we will have to stand firm, stand for what we believe in, regardless. It was like a war, and this was our fort, the LP, and everybody was leaving because we were being bombarded left and right.
I used to call it rats deserting a sinking ship.
Exactly.
Well, you have to hold the ship.
And I was not being asked to stay, just to stay. I was being asked to lead it.
To captain it.
And I said, I said this in the beginning. I said, it's not about the certainty of victory. It's about the certainty of our beliefs. There you go. So we lost 2016, we lost 2019, we lost 2022. And at some point I said, I'm tired of losing. And when I decided to run in 2025, I told myself, I said, our people no longer, how did I say it? Oh yeah, I said, we've lost 3 elections already. And so I took it upon myself. It was a solemn duty, sacred responsibility to deliver a victory for good governance and of course, coming from a 2022 election that was unprecedented in terms of the outpouring of support, of volunteerism.
North and South together.
Yes.
Yeah, well, for also the way.
So I said, we can't give up on them.
Yeah.
I remember in the 2020, these elections, I met Venice.
Yeah.
She was 11 in 2022. So she was 13 when I saw her in this election. And the moment she saw me, she broke down and cried. And she said, we supported you in 2022. And we were so brokenhearted. And I told her, I can understand when you put your heart and soul into something, and I said it in Filipino, masakit pag nabigo. Diba? You love the country so much that you wanted to support those who you felt would be best for the country, I said. And when we lost, That hurt, I said. But then I said, but we have to love again. We can't stop. Kahit na bigo, kailangan umibig pa rin, magmahal pa rin. And so that's why I'm running. I said, I'm running for you. And for all those who gave everything in 2022, that we're not done yet. In fact, after the Thanksgiving in 2022, I said this. I said, someone said that when you're committed to social transformation, there's no such thing as failure, only delay. So we continue, we plod on. And unfortunately, because of the international situation, all the more we need to, the truth, justice, human rights, these are all, sacred concepts, not just concepts, but values that we've fought for many, many decades. And we can't just give up on that, so we keep fighting.
Let me pull it out to America and the Philippines now, right? What we're seeing in America now is America turning away from many of those values. Everything is now being challenged in court. The same thing happened, right? Is there an opportunity for the Philippines today, given the creative destruction of the world order that America once led?
Definitely. I remember the conversations on Cambridge Analytica, Brexit, the Trump victory, and the book of Christopher Wiley.
What? Yes.
Yeah, he said that the petri dish for Brexit and for Trump's victory was the Philippines, because we came in May. Duterte's victory was May, Brexit was August, and November was Trump's victory. That's all in 2016. So we went ahead, and we learned, and therefore we went through that painful process ahead, that painful unfolding of disinformation and toxicity and digital, disinformation on steroids.
Yeah.
So we went through all that ahead, and we've pretty much, I guess, learned. It was a painful process, 3 elections before we finally figured out how to probably do a pushback. And moving forward, they say history does not repeat itself. It was Mark Twain who said it, but it often rhymes. So I remember saying this before this victory. In 1978, the first Batasang Pambansa interim elections, the opposition lost. But there was the first elections since martial law was declared. But I remember this because I participated in it. They called for a noise barrage. Cheating was massive. And the noise barrage was supposed to be for 1 hour, I think 6 to 7 in the evening. It went on until midnight, 1978. In that sense, people found their voice. So I would liken, in a sense, 1978 to 2022, when people found their voice after 6 years of being violated. They decided they want to fight back. So 2022, 78, people found their voices, stood up, wanted change. So I looked forward. 78 led to 84, 84 led to 86. So 2022 will lead to 2025, and 2025 to 2028. But we have to keep at it. One lesson for the 2022 elections is that you have to plan ahead. And this 2025 campaign was 3 years in the making, because we learned from 2022. You don't just prepare a year before. So we were meeting, we were strategizing, we were discussing since the 2022 defeat. So we have a lot of lessons learned, and we put these lessons into practice, and we won. But like I said, it's another step. We're not done yet. We can lose this. We can actually, by default, the gains, we have to preserve the gains and expand it. And that's what we have to do now. But again, we need to stay connected with our voters. We need to stay not marching too far ahead of them, nor should we be marching behind them. We should be marching in step with them. And that's the challenge. If we are to win this, we have to win this with the people. And I've said this before, there's no political power more on earth, more powerful than the people in their vast numbers, mobilized, organized, marching towards a common goal with leaders who are committed to marching with them.
And a shared reality of facts.
Yes.
This is the biggest problem we're having.
And that's why I say people are capable of making informed decisions. But we just have to make sure that the facts are made available to them.
The last question pulls it out.
Which is a challenge.
Well, here in America now, right? I actually, at the time when Duterte was arrested on alleged charges of crimes against humanity, America was turning its values and its system upside down. So the Philippines was right side up, yes, showing an international rules-based order still exists, while what was once a beacon, it was pushing away from it. I joke that sometimes that America can learn from the Philippines because we moved from hell to purgatory, and these elections showed us very similar to what you just said, right?
I believe so. Yes, in that sense, we were ahead. We learned our lessons. So maybe, in fact, when Kamala lost, when she lost, we were, looking at, okay, why did that happen? They were more, the analysts were saying they were more focused on the personality of Trump than they were on the issues that needed to be articulated, right? And that's why we focused on food prices being extremely high. That's why BAM focused on jobs, and we pounded on it. They tried to, hijack the narrative by throwing disinformation against us, me primarily, but we just went back to the issue and said...
It was huge. I mean, we chronicled some of that nerve, and we showed it almost as soon as former President Duterte was arrested.
Yes.
It came.
Yes.
A tsunami.
So that's what we need to keep at, pushing the truth, pushing our narrative of what matters to the voters, and therefore are able to keep in step with them, rather than, precisely like I said, rather than be too far ahead or too far behind.
It worries me when you say we have to do the narrative, as if there's a choice. Is there?
Sorry. Yeah,
no.
You're right. Well, pretty much.
It's the way we talk about it in communications,
yes,
right? But do people care about the truth? Does the truth still matter in this age of exponential life?
Definitely. Well, the truth is people in the Philippines are suffering from high food prices. That's the truth. There's no hunger. The incidence of hunger is highest since 2022, when everybody was on lockdown. Millions lost their jobs. The self-rated poverty is highest since 2004. And the levels of hopelessness is 2009 levels, when food prices then there was a spike in world food prices then. So definitely, people are suffering, and therefore we have to acknowledge and recognize and realize that this is the truth about where the people are, and how do we address that as servant leaders, as leaders who want to deliver. So yes, the narrative is the electoral political terminology, but in terms of governance, the truth is something that we must continue to, to embrace if we are to effectively speak on their behalf and lead.
How do you convince, in America today, there's a bill that's being, that's passing through that gives the wealthy far more and takes away from the poor. How would you convince wealthy Filipinos, right? Because in many ways, what former President Duterte did was he gave permission for people who are suffering to take revenge, and he chose the targets. How can we both encourage the wealthy? How can we build a sustainable society where...
Well, the reality is everybody loves a winner. And so we will have to build on this victory and reach out to all stakeholders to be able to come together and say this is the way forward together. It's like saying, how do you convince the traders who are exploiting the farmers to change their ways? It's a carrot and stick thing. They have to reinvent themselves because eventually you're going to squeeze blood from the farmers and therefore. So it's a challenge. They have to have a stake. You can't just go after them and say, your days are over. They're a player. So how do we, precisely why it's called reform, it's in leadership.
Yeah.
It's convincing them that this is the way to go, that unless we address the exploitation and our farmers remaining exploited and poor, you're not going to have a new generation of farmers. So it's a challenge. They must have a stake in it. And government must regulate. Government must not be captured. Mm-hmm. Government must fight for the farmers, but at the same time should not consider traders as someone that must be eliminated. In fact, I don't like that term. We must eliminate the middleman. The middleman plays a role precisely because government is not playing that role, or not enough of it. But the middleman should, but that requires leadership, carrot and stick. If you don't behave, this is what you're going to get in return. But if you cooperate, and government as the regulatory, body, precisely that's what government's supposed to do, right? Balance the interests, make sure that no one gets left behind, and that interests are managed effectively so that they can come up with the best result. In this case, precisely the relationship between the middlemen, the farmers, the consumers. So yes, it's a challenge, but that requires leadership and the ability to synergize and convince and persuade.
So we go back, sorry, I said that.
And this victory, hopefully, will be a stepping stone, a building block in terms of creating that common vision of a future that everybody has a role to play.
And that we help the most vulnerable still, right?
Yes.
Parang hindi siya uso ngayon dito eh.
No, dito yung pinaka-vulnerable, it's a power thing. It's just like the addicts.
Right.
Right? So we must be able to not seize power, but hold on to power and exercise it judiciously.
Great. Last question. Now, really, my last question is, rule of law took a beating under the 6 years of Rodrigo Duterte. I mean, I had 10 criminal charges.
Yes.
I know this, I feel this firsthand. How do you strengthen this? How does it recover? How do we recover so that these values can grow?
Well, we stop electing liars and cheats. Which goes back to, a leadership that will be able to stay in step with the constituents and able to provide, leadership that they can rely on and that they can trust and they can believe in. So, yeah. In fact, I said this before. You need at least 12 years of leadership that is consistent with, our values as a, good governance, rule of law, respect for human rights. 12 years of that will bring you to a level of reform that becomes irreversible. Risa says it has to be 18 years, meaning 3 terms. I said, I'll not argue that, 12 or 18.
Yeah, institution building. Then.
Yes, yes. Because we were able to do it for the first 6 years of Pinoy. In other words, it can be done. But it has to be sustained. And 6 years is not enough, clearly, as we've seen. But I like to think a 12-year timeline of good governance will bring the country to a level of development unprecedented, I think. The Philippines has so much potential that continues to be untapped and wasted because governance leaves much to be desired.
Fantastic. Your last thoughts, Senator Pangilinan?
We're not done yet. Obviously, this is a victory. But we have to keep fighting. I remember during my college days under the dictatorship, they say that rights aren't rights unless they're fought for. So clearly, we have rights that continue to be disregarded. Poverty continues to plague us. Corruption continues to remain unaddressed squarely. So this victory is we offer this victory to those who want better. Sabi ko nga, simple lang ang pangarap ng ating mga kababayan. Yung abot kamay na pagkain, masarap na pagkain, sapat na trabaho at hanap buhay, maayos, paggagamot na tama, na hindi pagka ikaw ay nagkasakit, biglang parang nawala na ng lahat. And that's what we have to fight for. This victory should be a stepping stone towards continuing the fight for precisely what our people deserve. Yun siguro. So this is an hope. We continue to hope, but we continue to fight.
We've been speaking with Senator Kiko Pangilinan. Thank you for holding the line.